my name is Marta Hernández, and I'm going to talk about bringing cannabis testing in-house. Be sure to select the right LIMS for your extraction lab. Well, in-house testing is not required federally. However, the states differ in their requirements. Many extraction laboratories have started establishing in-house testing facilities to maintain quality standards, save extraction costs, and reduce compliance testing failures. In this talk, I will tell you why it is essential to set up an in-house testing lab and how LIMS can optimize in-house workflow. Let's start by defining what is extraction. Extraction is a process by which the most potent compounds are extracted from the plant. These extracts can be used to make edibles, oils, pills, tinctures, etc. The cannabis extraction process uses volatile organic compounds to separate the target chemical compounds from the plant. They could be cannabinoids, flavonoids, terpenes, and others. The cannabis extraction process has 5 main steps. The number one is collecting and milling. Basically, it is a process by which the starting material, the cannabis, reduced to fine and consistent particle size just by grinding it. The second step is the extraction process itself. The extraction process can use different solvents, such as butane or CO2. The third step could be done before or after the extraction. It's the activation or the decarboxylation. The reason for decarboxylation is that the active cannabinoid in cannabis is the THCA, the acid, but this compound is not actually psychoactive. So the decarboxylation is caused by the slow heating process to obtain the THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient or compound in the cannabis. So it's the component that will give the expected effect for your product and your customers. The fourth step is winterization. The term winter comes because it's done at low temperature, and it's basically the precipitation of unwanted lipids from the extracted product. This can be skipped depending on what the final consumption method will be. And the fifth step is the third-party testing. This is an independent testing by a lab that is not involved in the process. At each step, we recommend that you must perform internal tests. After the extraction step, if you want to do another internal decarboxylation, you can do a real-time testing to see when the process is complete. And after winterizing, before shipping, by testing at each step, you can streamline the entire process using good manufacturing practices so your final product has a reproducible cannabinoid profile, and you can optimize the amount of time needed for each batch of steps so you can run as many lots as possible with your existing instrument set. Now let's see the forms of cannabis extracts. There is crumble, there is batter, shatter, distillate, crystalline, dry sieve, rosin, and bubble hash. Most of these forms are end products, and that can be sold directly to the customers and are actually used in vape pens. They can be added for smoking. Distillate is generally then used as an ingredient to make some other products. It could be something simple as a vape pen, or it could be something more like complicated, like an edible, like a gummy or a chocolate. Cannabis extracts have multiple uses and benefits and may be consumed in different ways depending on the indication and purpose. For example, the oils and tinctures. These liquids usually are infused with CBD or THC and placed under the tongue with a dropper. Oils and tinctures are a good choice for anyone who can take pills or capsules. Creams and lotions are topical and used to treat muscle and joint pain. The capsules and pills are used for systemic treatment of seizure disorders or digestive issues. The edibles could be gummies or chocolates. They are affordable, they're portable, they're discreet and tasty. The vaping, it's the inhaled vaporized THC oil and is the fastest way to experience the effect. So here's the first reason why a cannabis extraction lab will want to set up an in-house testing facility. Let's imagine that you have your own extraction lab. You follow a workflow like this on the slide. You receive the cannabis, you do the extraction process using like a solvent like CO2. Then you do the carboxylation, the purification, and enrichment with some terpenes to make the product, I don't know, for pain relief, for example. Finally, you send your finished product, whatever it is, like a cream, to an authorized third-party lab. And it turns out that it's a test failure. After all this process, there is a test failure in the final step. So this represents a huge financial loss for your extraction company, which will they have to destroy the product or put back into a new extraction, which it is very expensive and leads to lower yield. So you'll want to do everything you can to minimize this failure rate. If your final product is rejected by a third-party testing lab at the end, you will have large associated costs since you will have to make a new extraction or discard the product. There will be a delay in the delivery and your customers will not be very happy and income will be lost. For example, time delay. If you were having tests done on different aspects of the extraction, say you want the initial product to be tested for potency, for example. If you send that out to a third-party testing lab, it can take several days on average, depending on your state and the backlog. This will slow down the whole process. You have to store all the materials for the next steps while you are waiting for the results of the test. Lab backlog, it's another form of time delay. You are operating based upon the queue that is in a third-party testing lab, and there is a crunch time. So, for example, when Oregon legalized the recreational use for cannabis, the state had a very bad rollout, and there were only approved 2 recreational testing labs in the entire state. There was a tremendous backlog, and the extractors were stuck because it will take months for them with only 2 labs in the state to get the third-party approval. So the first benefit for setting up your own in-house testing lab is that you save all the extraction costs and you get your results faster. So let's see what is the formulation. This is a process that enables cannabis brands and manufacturers to develop products for a target physiological response. When it comes to formulation, the dose must be established. And what is the dose? Well, is the potency or the amount of THC that your product contains. But it is also the whole cannabis profile. Some of the cannabinoids are better for medicinal effects than others. So you also need to ensure the accuracy of your label. If you advertise a pain relief product, well, you need to make sure that its cannabinoid interpretation profile supports it, and also the adverse patient's reaction. So the legalization of cannabis in several states has brought several challenges for cannabis extractors. Due to the increased scrutiny, they are required to get the product test for an entire host of parameters to ensure customer health and safety, like heavy metals, pesticides, mycotoxins, or microorganisms can jeopardize patient health and can bring liability to the manufacturer if the manufacturer is not testing the extracts properly. So more tests can mean more time wasted waiting for the results. And if a sample falls, the whole extraction process needs to commence again. Linalool, for example, is a terpene that is found naturally in lavender. It's produced in rosemary and smells very good, and it has anti-anxiety properties. It leads to mental alertness in animal models, and it's highly effective as an antidepressant. So if you want to create a brand of extract that targets specific conditions like anxiety, it's at the high end on the market. You need to be very careful with your formulation. So the second benefit will be to control the complete cannabinoid profile of your final product. You can get consistent dosage and formulation, rapid onset of action, because depending on what is in your final product, it has different absorption rates. You get metabolic, predictability, and improved safety and effectiveness. So the third reason is GMP, it's good manufacturing practices. All cannabis extraction labs should be GMP compliant. How do you follow GMP in the cannabis industry? Well, it's very similar to the pharmaceutical industry. It starts with the SOP. You need to have an SOP for each step of your manufacturing process. This includes the extraction side as well as the testing side. So you want your SOPs to be optimized, and you want all your people to be trained and follow them. Prompt and accurate documentation of work for compliance and traceability. Every sample that you run needs to be traceable back to a quality control sample, like a spag or a duplicate or a blank, whatever it is. It's part of the 17025 compliance on the third party and local testing side. Properly maintained facility and equipment. This means perform calibration and maintains a per schedule. It gets even more complicated as we go later because a lot of analytical instruments such as LCMS or GCMS will have multiple subcomponents, and each one of which has its own schedule for calibration and maintenance. This brings us to the third benefit, which is higher yields, because using trend analysis, you can optimize the amount of time you spend in the extraction process, the carbylation process, and the wood sterilization process. You get better product consistency by controlling each step so that you get the same potency in the same cannabinoid profile, and your final product will be also consistent. Furthermore, it will reduce the liability since you are able to test right from the beginning of the process for pesticides, heavy metal, mycotoxins, bacteria, etc. So, as we see, the benefits are in each step of your process. In your extraction, right at the beginning, you can test the true potency of the flower, which has been given to you by the grower. You can look at your extraction efficiency and keep working on improving. So you can see in which step in your process you are losing the THC, so you can optimize it for that. In the post-processing, the main post-processing step, as we saw, it was the decarboxylation. You wanted to determine in real time when to stop the decarboxylation process, so you need to measure how much of the product is decarboxylated in real time. And this only can be done having an in-house testing lab. And in the formulation, when you have a formula, you want that every batch follow your formulation. If there is a variability in the starting materials, like if they have a slightly different cannabinoid profiles, slightly different potency, well, you can adjust this in the extraction process so that your end product meets your formulation. To do that, you need an in-house testing lab that will tell you after what steps you had a lower potency that you expected. So now in the next step, you have to use a higher concentration in order to bring the potency back up. It helps maintain the consistency with the final formulation. So We have seen all the benefits of having an in-house testing facility in a cannabis extraction. It's the only way you're going to be able to avoid the third-party compliance testing failures and all the delays that come with it. Furthermore, you can do formulation and follow GMP. Now let's see how a LIMS will help you with all of that. Well, a LIMS can help in so many ways. It can assure the quality of cannabis samples. There is an SOP for how you should be preparing samples or any type of test you're going to do. A LIMS securely manages SOPs and it tracks, maintains, and calibration of testing equipment as well as extraction equipment. It helps you manage documents, staff training, meet GMP requirements. We will see how. Testing and extraction labs have a lot of instruments. For analytical testing instruments needs to be calibrated and maintained. You can set the number of days before the scheduled calibration or maintenance date you would like to receive a reminder. And a LIMS can send you a reminder to initiate timely actions like call to the technician and schedule the calibration or the maintenance. Each instrument component may have its own calibration and maintenance date. For example, here on this slide, you can see that this Agilent instrument has 3 subcomponents, which you can see listed on the right. Each of those has its own calibration and maintenance schedule. So if you were doing this manually, you will have a booklet of your instrument calibration with no alert. So it's much better for the laboratory manager to do this in a LIMS, so it actually getting alerts and you know ahead of time when an instrument needs to be calibrated and maintained, so you have planning on time of the schedule. Testing calibration methods, associate dots. You need to have an SOP for how tests and calibration should be done. These are generally provided by the instruments manufacturers. The challenge is because this is a new industry. So the instrument manufacturers keep updating the testing and calibration SOPs associated with any instrument. When they issue a new one, you need to ensure that every technician gets retrained on it. And only the latest calibration and testing SOP comes up. A LIMS can do all that for you. You can see here that we had a particular version and then we replaced the version with the latest version. A LIMS will only have the latest version that comes up so that when the tech transition comes in to do the calibration, the technician is following the latest calibration method. But there are no errors here with obsolete SOP. Traceability is essential for 70025 compliance in a third-party testing lab, and it is really useful in an in-house testing lab as well. If someone asks, how do we know that the test result you provide was performed on an instrument that was properly maintained and calibrated, the LIMS will show that traceability. When was the test done, and when was the previous calibration done, and of course, there is an SOP that was followed for that calibration, the most recently. So you have a fully traceable record showing that your instrument was calibrated and maintained when you run that sample. Manage documents with LIMS. This is all your SOPs. So the second thing that will come up in the same liability is when the test was done, was the correct SOP followed? This will show only the latest SOP was available at the SOP that was used for any particular test. Manage staff training and competency. All your staff needs to be trained for each step of your extraction process and each of the steps of your testing process. Here you see training programs. In the lab safety training, we have some staff, some did well and some not so well. LIMS can generate a custom training and competency matrix. This matrix helps laboratory managers quickly visualize the competency level of the staff based on scores. and they can assign analytical tasks for the training staff and provide additional training to the incompetent staff. As part of the 17025 and GMP, you can say that your extraction is only being done by laboratory technicians who are found to be competent and properly trained for that particular process. Manage quality control sample with a LIMS. Anytime you do a test, you need to have traceability back to a QC sample. These are your spikes or your duplicates and blanks with you mixing between the samples to ensure that you are getting accurate results. LIMS can help you to manage QC samples and their test results with ease. It is part of the quality assurance. And if there is a question regarding the validity of a test result, say whatever there is a pesticide, for example, beyond the acceptable limit, you can show that your spike QC sample with a known concentration of pesticide and it was accurately quantified in the QC sample. So you can assure that if the pesticide was present in the test sample, it will have been detected. It also ensures that the potency is correct. If you say that pH level is like a 15%, it is. And you know this because the QC sample were able to correctly identify the THC concentration. So it is important to be able to generate the custom certificate of analysis. LIMS can help you to generate custom codes in the preferred layouts with ease and flag out specifications as results. This is very important because it's different in each state. So it is important to have a custom certificate of analysis to different states and different clients. Instrument and software integration. The Cannabis Extraction Labs perform testing on several samples on their day-to-day. Manual transfer of analytical data for instruments to LIMS is error-prone and reduces laboratory efficiency. For minimizing the test turnaround time and for maintaining data integrity, it is important to automate the data transfer process, and a good LIMS can be simply integrated with analytical instruments for bidirectional transfer data, thereby reducing turnaround time and eliminating chance of transcription errors. So as you can see, the benefits of implementing a cannabis LIMS in an in-house testing lab are numerous. Increase testing results, and the productivity, and increase the quality, and lower costs. And finally, the extraction lab is happy. We can observe a reduction in compliance failures, high throughput, the higher yield, a wider product range through reformulation, and repetition for consistency among customers. So thank you very much for your attention.